Seller snapped a 3-week rally despite second quarter GDP being revised higher and PCE coming in pretty much in line with expectations. So, is this healthy profit taking heading into some uncertainty, or is this the beginning of the end? My name is Lamont, full-time trader, part of the Chart Guys team, where I head up our futures room and the swing report. In this video, we'll go over all that and more. So, let's get into it. All right, so starting off with SPY, I guess we should talk about, the uncertainty. So like I said, second quarter GDP, it came in fine, and rather it was revised higher, and PCE came in, in line with expectations. But there's the potential of a government shutdown next week, and earnings season is like right around the corner. So considering all the strength that the market has seen heading into all these uncertain events, particularly the government shutdown, right now it kind of looks like there's not even any efforts to try to stop it. So that would be problematic for a few things. Obviously, the government's not functioning, then uh, companies will have a hard time operating in the same capacity, which is really what the market cares about, right? And we also won't get economic data, right? Because we next the end of next week, I believe Thursday or Friday, is supposed to be non-farm payrolls, right? So the market has cared a lot, or at least there's been a lot of attention on jobs data recently, and so if there is a government shutdown, then we will not get that report. Additionally, it's not just us; the Fed also won't get that report. So then now the Fed has a harder time setting its monetary policy, which then you know um, just is more uncertainty, right? So we have government shutdown, no potentially no data, and then also earnings season is like mid October, right? It's already ramping up right now. So I think very likely just some de-risking heading into all of these uncertain events. And is it the beginning of the end? Obviously, we never know, but what we can do, as always, is just look at our references. So, at least as of right now, there's not really any meaningful damage on the daily time frame. So we were watching this local daily demand zone, and yes, we are traded back within it. And you'll notice that Friday's close was pretty much right on the breakout point, right? This is the high that these buyers wanted to hold back test of in order to maintain full control of the daily trend, and they failed to do so. So, um, that being said, um, bigger picture, even if the sellers were to set a daily lower high here, right? Because we do have space for a lower high under the all-time high resistance, 66734. If we do set a lower high here and lower low, I really care about this guy, right? This is a lot more balance here than there was in these like 4 or 5 sessions. This is like a few weeks, really a couple months of balance over here. And the breakout point is 652.21. And even if we were to take out that level, I think if we can kind of hold over this guy where the most amount of value was established towards the upper end of this balance, I think that would be pretty constructive as well, bigger picture. Because, again, if we just zoom out, right, we're monthly time frame has been on a tear. The weekly time frame technically has space for a higher low as well, over 634.92. Could just see another shallow retracement, it's anybody's guess. But on the monthly time frame, again, I really wouldn't be surprised if we were to see some retracement and like bigger picture, if we were to get weekly oversold conditions to this prior high. I think that would probably set up a buying opportunity for bigger pictures. So whether or not this is the beginning of the end, it's not even really close to showing us any signs of that right now. But even if it were to begin some more heavy selling, I think I think bigger picture that would still set up a buying opportunity here, just like this situation over here set up a buying opportunity against this prior all-time high. It's not quite exactly the same because this was much more advanced over this breakout than this has been over this breakout, but it's a very similar concept, right? This major breakout from this prior all-time high, this 2025 high from earlier in the year, needs to, not that it needs to be back tested, but the market should want to back test it, right? It's like climbing a mountain, like when you climb a mountain or like crossing a river, like jumping on rocks or whatever, you're not gonna commit to a jump, right? I just thought of my buddy who fell into the river and the Potomac, not really checking anyway, but You're not going to fully commit to this unless you're gray. You're not going to fully commit to a jump unless you know, right, that one, you can make that jump, and that if you do make that jump, that it's not going to be like a slippery rock or an unstable rock. um, that's a funny day. Sorry, just trying. um, anyway, so that's what I'm thinking, especially if we were to get weekly oversold conditions, just like this over here was like we barely kissed weekly oversold conditions. And I'm sorry, we actually got quite down into weekly oversold conditions while we were testing this prior high. We would have that here too. If we were to just like drill down, let's say we get a government shutdown and we get bad earnings, drill down, I think that would probably create at least a bounce opportunity. Whether or not it sticks, who knows, right? But the the idea is I'm much more confident in saying that there would be a relief bounce in this area if we get weekly oversold conditions, compared to saying that weekly bounce is going to lead into new all-time highs. That, I mean, eventually over time it should, but whether that initial bounce leads to new highs, that much I have like next to no confidence. I have no idea. Right. But if we get extension into this area, just like every single time we get extension into a prior high like this guy, typically you'll get some kind of relief bounce, right? And that should be enough for us to position off of. Just like we were ready to buy here, at least in our community. I don't know how much we spoke about it in this video. I believe we did speak about it in these videos as well. We were ready to buy here in weekly oversold conditions on this back test. We had no idea that it was going to lead to new highs, but this bounce out of this area, that part was like pretty reasonable. We had reasonable, high confidence for that. Okay. It's kind of like, I don't know, like you can have high confidence that you're going to land a punch on somebody, but zero confidence that, it's going to stun them, let alone knock them out, right? So that's really it, for the SPY bigger picture, at least. So in the short term, again, we're looking for this potential lower high under the all-time high resistance 667.34. If sellers can set a daily lower low, that'll be the first time that that's happened, a lower high and a lower low in a long time since back here. And this was really just a little dinky lower high, lower low. But it would still be notable. And again, primarily we care about here in the intermediate, and then bigger picture, we care about the 613.23 level. Okay. Moving on to the Qs here. So the Qs actually has a lot more space for a potential lower high under 602.87, but at the same time, it also did a better job of playing defense against this local daily demand. I should also mention one thing. The low of this session, Friday session, was actually a miss of the value area low of this local daily demand. It's a notable failure. It's not a lot to go on right now, but we did close strong on Friday as well. So if we see acceptance back over 661.78 next week after that failure, it would be very notable. And honestly, it would be a pretty good look for these buyers. I mentioned that because in the Qs, it's very similar. The Qs over here, except it's a little bit better. The sellers failed to touch down on the point of control of this local daily demand. It was so close and they failed to get there. And so actually this breakout continues to be affirmed, right? Because they're still holding over 592.86. So the Qs actually look fine, even better compared to the ES and the SPY. All right, but still have to be mindful of potential lower high. And if we lower high and lower low, I'm thinking this guy becomes super key, 583.32. If we just chop around up here, holding over 583.32, that's really not a big deal. That's just like this chopping around over here, holding over this guy, right? So this breakout over this, wait, I'll just steal this guy over here. This breakout was back tested here. It was affirmed on this hold, right? And then we just balance over it. That's not a problem. So if we see this kind of situation shake out again over here, market's not going to be too worried about that. Or rather, we shouldn't be too worried about that. Market's not worried about anything. Markets are just markets. All right, so moving on to the rut. The rut is showing us some relative weakness, right? It's another bit of a heartbreak breakout here. Heart breakout. Just like my heart is pretty, potentially. That's a cholesterol joke. Yeah, this breakout right now, I'm not seeing any follow through. And not the first time, right? This happens a lot. This breakout itself was actually a long-term breakout over this prior high, and it didn't see follow through. The IWM just kind of has, just that's in its character, it has a propensity to just kind of chop around and balance for long periods of time, much more so than the ES, the NQ, even the Dow, because it's just so many different pieces, 2,000 assets more or less, and also it's the smaller caps, the weaker ones. They carry more debt, they have less profitability, etc. So typically harder for these for this index to see follow through. Yeah. So that being said, as of right now, technically they did get back over this daily no change level 240.93. So this breakout over this high over here is being affirmed, and this level is also the same as the point of control of the prior all-time high structure. So as long as we're holding over 240.88, then we're affirming this guy as demand, and affirming this guy as demand keeps these buyers positioned well for new highs. So not bad. All things considered, again, lots of space for a lower high, and you are looking up at this daily overhead supply. Everybody is, right? ES SPY has this 5 days or so of supply. Qs has about 4 or 5 days of supply. The RUT, same deal, it has a bunch of supply overhead. So wouldn't be terribly surprising to reject from this supply. And then if we reject from the supply and then take out this demand, the sellers are now in control of the daily trend, which that hasn't happened in a long time, right? We haven't created overhead supply and taken out demand since back here. And even back here, this is like arguable, right? Like, is this separate from this structure? It's not very clear. And then the breakdown through this demand zone, nothing really happened. You just get caught up at this area and then you advance again. So, it's been a long time since you've had a really clear supply zone above a prior demand zone. Like, I would not say it's very reasonable to consider this one area sideways, like this guy over here. I would not say that's I don't know what. Whenever I start talking to the camera, my cat starts being a rascal. I don't know what he's doing down there. Um, I would not consider this one structure. I would say this is balanced, this is balanced. So it's been a long time since we've had a very clear area of supply and then take out a very clear area of demand lower. I should stop him, but I don't want to edit the video. All right, so that's pretty much it for the rut here. So if we lower high and lower low, I'm thinking it's right back to eyeing this guy, right? Because, well, this guy is really the last area where there was any meaningful demand. Like, this is probably like 8 days of sideways. This is like 4 to 5. This is like 4 to 5. So a lot more value was established here, and it's kind of the gateway into all of this down here, right? This much bigger chunk over here. So we'll see. We'll take it one day at a time. And honestly, this is like a lot more balanced, right? And I think this guy over here was a good amount of supply. It took a long time for these buyers to overcome it. So I think if we really see some hot and heavy selling, even this I don't really care as much about. I think if we hold over this, again, considering how IWM balances for like a lot, doing something like this over this chunk, I think would be fine, right? Just like this is a pretty large area of balance. This is a pretty large area of balance. These are very small. The IWM tends to have these large areas of balance. So I would not be surprised if we were to do something like that. And that would still keep these buyers like pretty much stone's throw away from the all-time high supply. And I think, well, bigger picture, that would be, more or less okay. Again, you zoom out and it's like there's tons of space for a weekly higher low. Well, not tons of space if you consider this the weekly higher low, but I'm just looking at this as one move up. If you look at it like that, then this is the structure that I'm talking about that we should care about. It's really this guy, but this is the local structure. And the monthly time frame has tons of space for a higher low as well. So that's it. Moving on to the Dow. All right, so oh right, trade zone. No, none of those entered the ES and Q. We were more conservative with it because I'm just thinking, I think the odds of us seeing some deeper retracement pretty good. But for the Dow, we set this guy up. It was pretty clear. Just back test of this local area of daily demand. If we lower high here and don't get to the target, that would be unfortunate. But if you considering how much acceptance we've found in this demand in this supply so far, looking for a rotation to the other side of it should be pretty reasonable. I think it's if you entered off of the highs of this trade zone, I would pull those lower orders and then just chop it up, leave your stop under here. If we lower low, stop out and reset, look for extension playing off of this guy again. I think that would be fine. And that's a potential add too, right? So like if you're in from here originally and this is just an add, no reason to give back on an ad. I don't like doing that personally, at least. Like, I'd rather just be more conservative with the ad and protect any profits that we already have. So that's pretty much it. And then if you're still walking a runner from here, no later than here, I would say we should probably look to just get out of this any initiations from this trade zone here. All right, so space for a lower high as well under the all-time high resistance 467. If we were to lower high and lower low, this is very clearly the most important local daily demand zone that we should be caring about. It's a lot of balance. And then, again, if you zoom out, this is a lot more balance here, right? Like you can see how we have like this is kind of like one structure here. This is some supply over this guy. You break down, but you just come back and back test this larger area, and then it's pretty much all good. I think this and this structure are very similar, so we might just be looking at something like that again. So if we were to lower low here and not really find acceptance back under 452.15, and there's not really a lot of volume there, so I would just look at it as this structure, a lot more volume around 448. Bigger picture again. If we balance like this, that's fine. Like I think it can be easy to kind of lose sight of how the market balances and trends, right? Especially if the market's been trending really hard for a long time. But that is its nature. Its nature is to balance and trend. In fact, it balances far more often than it trends, because that's what a market wants to do. A market wants to find balance. It doesn't want to be erratic, right? Because the whole point of the market is to distribute goods effectively. In order to do that, it needs to find a fair price to do business. And if finds a fair price to do business, then a lot of people think that's a fair price. If a lot of people think that's a fair price, then you end up doing a lot of transactions there. If you do a lot of transactions there, well, then obviously that takes a lot of time, right? So yeah, that's pretty much it for that. And then moving on to the dollar. So the dollar again, I just there's no change in the dollar, right? As long as we're holding under this guy and over this guy, this is the structure that maintained all of these lows over here, and this is the next area of demand that these sellers need to get through in order to advance. And so it's very reasonable to just be doing responsive trade, right? In these, I still stand by both of these trade zones. This guy finally got to target, made us wait forever. I would have a stop for any remaining position like over this high, no later than this high, right? So no later than here would I leave a stop for any runner after, if you sold in here and then took out profit at the target or anywhere on the way down, your stop should be no further higher than above 98.89. And then if you use this buy zone, then I would leave it, right? I would maybe chop this up here because you're in the middle of this, and whenever you're in the middle of a range, it can get very choppy. You can definitely do like a U-turn here and then still hold it and then advance. It can look really ugly here. So like this, you break down pretty much U-turn like nearly the whole thing, and then like stall there, but eventually it does break down. Just trying to figure out if that sound is chewing because there are cables back there. Anyway, his hammock broke today, so I think he's like throwing a fit right now that he doesn't have his full climbing capacity on the wall behind me. He's so bossy. Anyway, so what I would do if you're in from this trade zone is chop it up and then just walk your stop up to under here, and then ideally wait for some daily demand to be established and then break out. I mean, this is not bad, honestly. If you wanted to tighten up the stop to here, I think that's fine too. If you haven't taken any profit, I think walking your stop up to here for any initiation here makes a lot of sense. If you have taken profit on this trade zone here, then I would just leave my stop under this low and then see if we can get some more meaningful daily demand and a breakout of that before looking for another exit. And if we rotate to the highs of this range, the value area low of this guy, I think very reasonable to just look for a chop there. That's actually where our targeting is. So that's it. Daily trend is bullish. Space for a higher low over 96.835. Anything over that's going to be good for another daily higher low. Moving on to gold here. This is the CFD chart on Owanda, and it is just fine, right? Like this consolidation is super healthy, right? Because all it is all this sideways trade is just consolidating the breakout over 3707.55. And even if we were lower high, lower low here, if you can just hold over 3644.354, that would continue to affirm this guy as demand, and this is just the local daily demand. And so if these buyers can just do something like this, no problemo, right? You're probably getting sick of hearing stuff like this, but it needs to be said just to call things for what they are. And also, like, I feel like it takes time to internalize these kinds of concepts, right? Like, okay, yes, we're seeing selling, or yes, we're seeing buying, but to assess the strength of that selling or the buying, kind of getting this kind of contextual awareness, right? Like what kind of change is occurring, what kind of change is being negated. That kind of takes time to get comfortable with, because there's like emotion to it, right? Whenever your money's on the line, right? And so, line go up, line go down, numbers go up, numbers go down. It affects your clarity. It's kind of like when you're hangry. like you're hangry, your brain thinks, oh, we're low on resources, and so you make bad decisions, right? Like you get snappy with your cat or um wife, maybe. No, never with your wife. But you know, you know how it goes when you're hangry. Sometimes you make bad choices. Like trying to jump across the Potomac to get back to the car where the sandwiches are. um, anyway, so that's really it. 3644.354. That's what we care about. Bigger picture for the gold. And this is so far as a notable failure. Like they didn't even backtest the breakout point yet. So again, this consolidation is still quite healthy. Moving on to NVDA, this is really just hanging out, trading sideways, like an aggressive operator. If you wanted to be bottom fishing off the lows of this range, I would not be able to fault you for that, especially if you were to set up like a deep developing value area, developing point of control, and you were just like, okay, listen, when I see a pass back over, like a dip a little under and then pass back over it, I'm just gonna buy that pass back over it, target the Deepak and the Diva. I think that's fine. Like it worked really well here. You probably wouldn't have started it here because it's not very clear balance yet, but once you see all of this chop, I think it's reasonable to have it anchored here, or you could have had it anchored here as well. I think that would be fine, and then you get a decent setup here on this one. This one's much better. That's fine. And then you get a nice one here, get a nice one here. So I wouldn't fault you if you're looking for that, just responsive trade. But again, bigger picture, I care primarily about a backtest of this guy. It's just maybe it doesn't happen. I have no idea, but I have seen this, song and dance so many times before that very, very often that these backtests of major breakout points where there was a lot of value established in the past very often will get retested. And so I prefer to look for value plays there. All right, so that's pretty much it. And if I'm wrong, whatever, it is what it is. We already, gifted you guys these. So if this one doesn't set up, I hope you will forgive me. For Bitcoin, it's funny. Last week we had that arrow here, right? Last week we had that arrow here, and then and then we were looking for it to here because, well, if as long as you are holding over this guy, then you're still affirming this guy as demand, right? And so that is the case right now, where these buyers are just kind of clinging on to this point of control. And this point of control is meaningful, not just because it's the point of control of this gateway structure into this much larger area of demand, but also because it's the prior all-time high over here, So higher prices relative to the prior all-time high still being accepted as long as you can find acceptance over 109,358.01, which again is pretty much the same level as this kind of gateway structure into all of this demand here. So let's just stand by this. This trade zone we did recommend profit taking here, so it didn't get to our ultimate objective, but even a profit taking there is still decent R. I still think it's reasonable. We shall see. Like again, if this is all balanced over here, trading over this guy, that's fine. So we'll see. Lots of space for a daily lower high. Anything under 113,999.98 is going to be good for a daily lower high. Inside bar right now, so indecision. We'll see. Potentially looking at a lower high and lower low here, which would be the first time since back here, and back here didn't really amount to anything. It's been a lot of lower high, lower lows lacking follow through, huh? This is exactly what I'm talking about with price action trends. When you see a lower high, lower low, but it's just backtesting like a really big block of demand, you should always be a little bit more wary of that. So monthly retracement looks like it's probably coming sooner rather than later. It's very, very close to occurring, especially because there's only 2 days left on this candle. And so if we close at near the lows, then next month, sellers are positioned quite well to initiate that retracement. But you never know. We take it day by day. And I think there was a situation with the SPY, right, where it was like they were super close to turning over here, and then they didn't. I think it was here, right? No, I think there was something more. Either way, was it monthly? I forget. Either way, no big deal so far. So we'll see. Moving on to Ethereum. So Ethereum, okay, finally in this trade zone here. Again, I still think this is reasonable. It's not looking great right now, of course, but the buyers are defending against a high of this key structure over here. Now, you can't love the fact that this was a break into new all-time highs with no acceptance. It's very similar to XRP USD. So like that's a bit of a red flag, right? This breakout and then fall back into range, because if this is going to be a higher high that lacks follow through or look above and fail, so to speak, then that puts this whole range back in play. Just like this higher high here, like follow through, and what happens? You come back down and you pretty much you test the net the like the it's not the lows of range yet, but it's where there's a lot of balance before this big breakout. So I would not be surprised if we just fall right back into range again and then just chop around for more, especially because Ethereum, they kind of having their cake eaten, right, by other cryptos like Soul and whatnot, right, which itself also did not break to new all-time highs either, or rather pop and drop. This is exactly what I'm talking about, right? If you pop and drop, you should expect the test of the most local area of demand. Pop and drop again, all right, test the lows of this big old demand. That could very well be in the cards for Ethereum. IWM was also very similar, right? This is just what happens. Like if you higher high like follow through, for example, here's balance, lower low no follow through, test the highs, higher high no follow through, test the lows, higher high no follow through, test the low, lower low no follow through, test the high, blah blah blah. So that's just how markets work. And so right now, this is a super key spot. If you trade through this guy, then the odds of us coming all the way back down to the lows of this range, like maybe even down to the thousands again, I would say we would increase significantly. If you take this guy out, then we're back to being in here. Recall what this trade zone was set up based on, right? After this guy over here, we're looking for a retracement. It only came into the trade zone ever so slightly, but why did we care about that? We were thinking, okay, well, now that we've broken back into this range, looking for a retracement play to hold this guy, which is what held all these lows here, should see a test of the other side. The opposite is true now, right? If you come back down into this guy, which is what contained these highs and these highs and these highs, that greatly increases the potential that we're going for another round trip, So we shall see. And I don't hate trying for a sell. I think I would prefer if we would drill a little bit lower first and then top fish against this guy, right? So something like this. Let them come in and then we'll top fish against here and then try to play basically the opposite of this. I think very reasonable. All right, and then moving on to CCJ. So for CCJ, no real change. Like it did hold this back test of this local area of daily demand, but again, like this bigger picture chop over here is really what I care about. I have a hard time seeing them not back tested. Just looking at how choppy it is back here, how choppy it was throughout pretty much always. It just has a lot of back and forth action. Even when there's range expansion, there's a lot of back and forth action here. So I am personally still just waiting on something like that to set up. So we shall see. And I think we gifted this one. I'm not sure if this was in public videos or in our private streams. I forget, but it's a pretty similar idea, except we were bottom fishing this time off. And not really, honestly, it's pretty similar. We're looking for a backtest of this guy. But why were we using this structure? Oh, because this structure, market already told us it was important over here. We don't really have that structure here yet. All right, so that's it. Let's see, for trade review, I'm kind of battling the yips here, but what's the best way to get over something like that, I think, is to just make some changes, right? So if you're not familiar, I'm just talking about I got some bad blood work, which was surprising to me because I didn't think I ate that dirty, but actually thinking back about it, we do get a reasonable amount of takeout, particularly on the weekends. I would say that's like my wife's like Achilles heel. It's like ordering out, and like we'll go to restaurants and order like 4 to 8 entrees. Because like it'll look ridiculous with just the two of us at a table, and like if we get seated at a table that's just for 2 people, like a whatever normal size table, my wife will always ask for another table, like a bigger table, like 1 for 4, because she likes to try all the different things. She's a bit of a foodie. She has like 30,000 Google Maps restaurants saved on Google Maps and on Yelp. Like whenever we're anywhere, she always has a place that she wanted to try from like an influencer or whatever. I don't even know how she populates those lists. But anyway, my point is I didn't think I was living that unhealthily, particularly with my activity. My activity is really high, like anywhere from an hour to 2 hour minimum of cardio a day. And that's not including walking the dog, which I guess is technically cardio. And like resistance training 4 to 6 times. So I really thought it was fine, but I guess not. I had really high cholesterol, high blood sugar, so and low white blood cell count. So like it's just a lot of stuff that I thought wouldn't be problematic that was, and that's kind of shaken my confidence. I think my confidence in my decisions, and that's been translating, I think, into the trading where I've been more hesitant. I've never really had an issue with being trigger shy, um, and I've never really had an issue with like bailing early on a trade. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes there's like honed intuition, right? And there are going to be times when you know, take off a trade after you've put it on, just based off of like, you know what, I don't think it makes sense anymore. Like, especially if you trade the news, right? If you trade the news events, then you're reacting very quickly to a headline, and then you kind of process it afterwards, and then you realize, you know what, maybe this doesn't make any sense, and you take it off. That's fine, but that's not really what's been happening with me, right? Like, I've just been kind of second guessing myself, which has been leading to, I think, poor execution. The yips, basically, right? If you're into sports or whatever, I just feel like I was kind of in my head. And it's the first time that I've experienced this in 8 years or so. So it's something that like it's a new challenge for me. But the way that I see it is like, okay, well, what am I doing in my personal life? I'm making dietary changes, right? And I've made aggressive dietary changes. Cut out red meat, no butter. I freaking love butter, so that sucks. No cheese. I freaking love cheese. So if it turns out all of those things will kill you, or it's not good for the old ticker. So that and cooking all our meals. We're not eating out anymore. A lot more plant protein. I'm hungry all the time because I feel like whatever it is with plant protein, it's not satiating, or maybe just because not enough, not eating as many fats. I don't know. Either way, I mean, we're still getting a lot of fat from avocados and nuts. I don't know. Either way, it's like I just feel hungry. But anyway, so that's the way that I'm approaching it with trading too. It's like, okay, well, clearly the environment is telling me something, and I just need to make some changes. And so I'm just doing that with the trades as well. I'm just going forward and trying my best to make disciplined changes despite the second guessing. It's honestly been a bit of a mind f. But anyway, not a terrible week. I still think it could have been better, but not bad. So let's get into it here. It was all RTY this week. Everything I did was an RTY. So the first thing we did was I sold it on the 22nd. Let's see, daily. Okay, it was the pop and drop after the all-time high. So the context was this. Let's see, this was on here. So we had the pop and drop on Friday, and then we had a really weak open and gap down open. So I was thinking, all right, if we get an incomplete fill or a weak open, then we can go with that and try to play down to here, because the sellers, they should be trying to negate this breakout and get back under this prior all-time high structures point of control. So that was over here. Honestly, that's not bad, right? That's not bad execution. So I sold the RTY on the pass back under, looking for the overnight low for a chop. And I say the second pass back under because there was an initial drive lower, and then it moved back over. So I didn't fire it right away, even though I could have, right? Because the risk would have been fine. So again, you set it up for the O&L, and actually this is wrong. It should have been here. I set it up with 1.5, and it would have been like fine, right? But I hesitated, and so I'm just pointing that out as a reminder to myself. It's still happening, right? The yips, you're still getting the yips right now, right? You could have hammered it right away, but instead I waited for a move back over the open, and then the second roll down before hitting the sell, and then targeting the overnight low. And the next place I was targeting was 49.3, and 49.3 was just the high of Wednesday's morning move. So that's over here. That's here, right? So here's the initial morning move on Wednesday, and then this is the FOMC reaction. You can see how on Thursday, the high of this initial like opening range was also right there. So the market already told us it was a very important level, and the market's always trying to either affirm or negate prior structure or create new structure. And so I figure if these sells are going to fail on the way down, then it should be here, right? Somewhere over here. So I just took another chop over there. Took another chop above 49.3. I always use meme exits. So I just did it above it, which was the 50.8. I just like to include 8 in my orders just because it's lucky in Chinese culture. So that's what I did. And then let's see, that was it. And then I stopped out the rest, and that was it. And I just want to shout out to Sync here, one of our guys. He hangs on the futures room a lot. He does other stuff too, but he hangs on the futures room a lot. He pointed out this level as well. Like it was later in the session. I think it was actually at night. It was at 7:30 at night. But yeah, it's at 7:30 at night. But he was saying, saw this exact IWM price reversal of interest, and it was after the fact. But I think that it's important to do that kind of work, to look back on the day and kind of like reverse engineer stuff and be like, okay, well, where were their major turns? Can I apply like some kind of reasoning to this, right? Was this an area of change or whatever? Because it's like slow is smooth and smooth is fast, right? They got to do things slowly and like kind of almost like retroactively for a while before it becomes intuitive. That's just how learning goes, right? Like when you're trying to get better at something initially, like let's say like learning a new skill or whatever, at first it's like you don't even know you're making a mistake, you don't even know you're doing it poorly, and then you learn the right way to do it, and then next time around, as soon as you make that mistake, you're still going to make the mistake again, right? Like you're probably going to make that mistake forever, just like fewer, right? There's going to be fewer occurrences and they're not going to be as bad, just like your regular life. Things that you do really well, you still probably make mistakes every now and then, right? Like maybe you're a really great partner, but every now and then you forget to like really hear and listen to what your partner is saying or whatever, and you like kind of get caught up with like problem solving instead of just making space for them to be heard or whatever. That's probably going to happen forever, right? Because there's a natural inclination to do that. But when you know what you're doing, you're more cognizant of it. It happens fewer and fewer times, right? And to a lesser degree. So I think very valuable to do this. And I just pointed out that I was looking at that. That's exactly where I exited, just trying to affirm that observation of his. Let him know that yeah, that's a good spot, and it's something to look out for in the future too. Like just look for these areas of potential change. And the change in this specific context is that okay, again, it's that like it's this guy, right? It's the high of this morning move, and then the FOMC reaction around it, and then it gets the significance gets affirmed on this session. If these cells are going to start having problems, especially if all of this move gets negated, where should they start having problems? They should probably be here. It's also the value area high, of the 17th. So if you're going to start moving the value lower from a session to session perspective under here, okay, what's next, right? If you're under these guys, then you're trying to negate this session next. So there's actually a lot of reasons for this to be a significant level. So I use it as an exit for a sell, but an aggressive buyer could have been using it as a buy, and that would have been pretty solid trade. All right, so moving on to the 23rd. On the 23rd here, the daily context is this. The 23rd is here, right? So we get a gap up now, so it's the opposite, right? And so I'm thinking, all right, well, if we're gonna get a gap up right on this all-time high, then we can make a potential buy to go with these buyers as long as they're holding over yesterday's regular trading hours high. And I know it ended up being a red day, but initially on the morning, it was fine. It was a fine trade. I didn't really get a great trade out of it. It's pretty good, but just a decent trade because I let the runner get stopped out all the way in the end. Is what it is. I risked it for the biscuit, even knowing that there was an FOMC, not FOMC, JPOW was talking on this day. I still risked it for the biscuit, but whatever. That's just trading. And this time I don't think I had any delay. It was right on the dot here. Oh no, I'm sorry. There was a back test of the regular trading hours high first, so that actually made it a little bit easier. Oh, the level is not here. I failed to include it, but here. So the open was here, and then they back tested yesterday's regular trading hours high, and then held it to the tick. And that was a very cheap setup. So I thought, all right, well, they just held it. If I see this regular trading hours high, as soon as I see that, I think, okay, if we pass back over the open, I'm gonna buy it and throw my stop onto the low because that would be the day plus buyers trying to keep control. And so I see that move, buy the pass back over the open, and I was looking for some rotation because the Qs was weak. So I was thinking on if you look on the 22nd on this day, Qs look like 23rd, excuse me, Qs look like this, so they were weak. So I was thinking potential rotation right out of the Qs and into small caps. That's what I say here, and I'm thinking, all right, stop is under the low of the day. I'm looking for an exit under 91.7, and 91.7 is just this. That's weird. Where I could have swore I had the levels marked up, but I guess not. 91.7 is just here over here. It's just the high of. I'm sorry, it's over here. Wait, what? Should have been here. I think the line's just getting lost in there. Yeah, there it is. 91.7 Yeah, so 91.7 is just a high of this Thursday session. And then I made a bit of an error here, right? I was looking at this as the all-time high. So I took another exit off over here, right? Looking out mass at the all-time high test. That was a mistake, because I should have been looking at the all-time at the overnight session. The overnight session, we had way more price action up here, so I probably could have held out for a further target. So a bit of an error there, but still got two exits. I know I'm getting paid on this attempt now. And so even if I stop out the rest, right, still decent win here, like almost 18 points, almost 20 points or so. And then I just look to walk the stop up for the rest. I acknowledge the JPOW speech is about to occur, but I just decided to risk it for the biscuit. And then I stopped out at the on this move, in the end of the day. So no biggie. Stopped out the rest, but still a decent trade overall. And then that was it. And then for the 24th, again, I did RTY. Okay, so for RTY on the 24th, it looks like this, right? We're opening up within range. And this was a day that the yips really hurt me on this session, because I don't even really need these comments to remind me. I know exactly what happened. So on this day, because I kind of was beating myself up about it over for a while afterwards. So I hit this sell against the overnight high, and I was looking for this exit over here, which was yesterday's point of control, and like the high of this opening candle. And I let this failure kind of just wig me out here, right? So I was thinking, and I say this in the comments, that it should be pretty squeezy to negate yesterday's low. Wait. Tempo uptick but failure to touch down is not ideal. So it should have been pretty. This lower low should have been a smash to here if these were strong sellers in that moment. But the thing is, that's like in that moment, and if the change has not been negated, so like the change that we're looking for right now is this. The context for this trade makes so much sense. I really considered it a layup, and I just completely fumbled it. So this is a sell against the overnight high, but it's also a sell against the end of the day structure's high from the prior day, the prior day's end of the structure high. And you've heard me talk about this setup a lot. This is one of my most preferred setups. We're just looking for continuation of what happened yesterday. And what happened yesterday was this breakdown and then balance to trading sideways after this breakdown. So this is just consolidation of this. You can see I'm getting worked up right now because I really felt shitty about this one, because it's like a trade that I do all the time. And so to fumble it and then it saw great follow through, it kind of stung for a while. And even that, hasn't really been an issue for a long time with me. So I'm kind of, again, I just kind of got the yips right now. But yeah, so let me just walk you through it, right? So I see this lower low under this low, and it didn't smash, so that I just exited the trade here. So it was like nothing, just like nothing burger, like a four points or whatever. I walked away with 4 points here, and then I tried it again here because I see this move down and I'm thinking, all right, you know what? Like I shouldn't have passed on that. And if I was going to exit early here, then I should have been prepared to fire again here, right? Because it's even cheaper here, right? Like technically, like you have even less follow through over here. If you were to just run your stop right above the high, I would have just given it the same amount of wiggle room, honestly. But it's an even better setup looking for a lower high here, technically, right? So kind of beating myself up here. And then I see this stair step back over the point of control of the prior session. So I'm thinking, all right, pretty cheap to try to get back to this guy over here, right? Like this little three bar that they broke out of. And I was thinking that's like a pretty reasonable target to get to, like a failure to get to the deval, right? I was thinking if we're going to fail here at the deplock, you probably get a little bit more distance. That was my logic anyway. It's not the best logic, I don't think, but I think I was starting to be tilty here. And then I say it's my last attempt before I go eat, because I was getting hangry, and it's about time where I normally eat. And these days, like I said, I just get hungrier. It's not that I'm getting hungrier more. I am hungrier more, but like hunger comes on much faster for whatever reason. Like I could feel fine, and then all of a sudden I feel like hypoglycemic and I just want to eat. And I think that's just because there's not a lot of fats in my diet now. I think. I don't know. Either way, sucks. But anyway, Yeah, so I just chopped it, stopped it out, and then I said I'm just gonna go eat. And I call this out too. I say last attempt before food. Sellers need to hold YPOC, blah blah blah. Stopped. I'm grabbing grub. The overnight high and the high of yesterday's end of the day balance is still a reasonable location, but I don't want to wait around for it. And it's at 10:10. So I stopped out over here at 10:10. And then it's just 1 minute later. I could just wait 1 minute, and that setup would have presented again. And I just didn't do it because I was just wasn't I just wasn't being sharp. I don't know. And then again, this one had just massive follow through. Like I had a decent week. There's nothing to complain about. But it could have been a great, it could have been a much better week because then we got that gap down. So like, think about it. This location here. Like even if you sell it at the gap, it's 50 points. And then to the lows is 70. So it's like ah, um, so a bit of a stinger. But is what it is. Can't let it get to you too bad or too much. Otherwise, it's just gonna get worse, right? So next day, I get right back on the saddle on the 25th. And the 25th, the context is this guy. Oh, right. I have a trade on Friday as well, but it was during the live stream. All right. So the 25th is this context is a big old gap down. So I hesitate again, and there was a pretty decent sell setup, very, like pretty close to the bell that's over here. It was a pretty solid sell setup to get to the overnight low, but I hesitated on that. So whatever, I missed it. And then I think, okay, well, you know what? Bigger picture, we're probably gonna just digest, right? Because it's a big gap. And typically when you get a big gap, there's a lot of transactions that need to occur. People are rebalancing, they're rethinking their positions. And so I was like, okay, whatever. If we're gonna balance, then I'm eyeing a pass back over the developing value area low after initial hold of the prior all-time high supplies value area low. So that's this, right? I see this guy, this initial hold, and this is the low of this all-time high structure. So I'm thinking, all right, it's a big gap, potential to balance. If we're gonna balance, and not create any meaningful change, it's probably there where these buyers will stall. I didn't buy right off of that, but I waited for the move off of there first. And then I just bought this deval pass. So this low over here at 944 is the test of that level, right? If you just zoom in over here, that's here, right? 944, test that level. And then I just bought this move back over the deval here, right? So I just put my limit order in, and then I was looking for an exit. Hang on, where's all my references? And I was looking for an exit. Originally, I was looking for it at the diva here, but I ended up not doing that. I ended up looking for taking it off here at the open because the development value area high printed lower. So I ended up just chopping it up at the open instead. Which didn't make it a great exit. It only gave it like 1R. And then I took off more at the high of the day test. So honestly, not a bad day from a point perspective, but from an R perspective, it wasn't ideal. So I called this out even before it sets up. It's at 46. So at 46, we're in here, sets up. And then let's see, thinking potential digestion, blah blah blah. Would I prefer? And then this is a red flag, another red flag on 952. Ryan, shout out to Ryan pointing out that there were some good stair step setups at the low of the day for ES as well. And then I said it had to be NQ and RTY for me because the ES wasn't testing a daily level, and that's just flat out wrong. Like, I don't know why I would say that because it's a daily double bottom, potentially a daily double bottom, right? It's just testing this low over here. So that was just a big red flag for me to, again, just, I'm just trying to be observant of myself and the kind of errors that I'm making right now. So I'm making like kind of observational errors and then also just like I'm hesitating a lot. So, just I'm not trying to center on it, right? Because I don't want to like keep repeating the mistake, but you need to be aware of what you're doing, right? To try to overcome it. So, I'm just keeping myself accountable for, for that. And so I just take the chop here at 10:02. I had a contractor as well, so I was a bit distracted. I didn't want to have to like come in and out and like manage a trade. So I took it out, chop it up more here, and that was fine. Decent amount, like 25 or 30 points or so, so not a bad day. And then I stopped out the rest on this move after I walked the stop up. I walked the stop up to under this guy after this move, and then stopped it out over here, and there was follow through on it, but what are you gonna do? And let's see, carry over target into Friday's buy. Oh, right, because I was trying to get here. oops, I was trying to get here. Like my target for this buy was to try to get back up to this point of control back test. And then I don't have any comments for it because I did this on our live stream for our community. So if you're interested in joining a community, we stream I don't stream every morning, but we have a team member streaming every morning. Mondays is Dan, Tuesdays and Wednesdays Lori, Thursday is Dinsey, and then Friday I do the live stream. And so sometimes we'll do trades live if something is present. I've kind of taken a hiatus from it for a while just because I made an error, a costly error that was due to my attention being divided. I stopped out of a trade, but I left the take profit on there, and because I didn't have the position on anymore, the take profit turned into a new position, and then I ended up with a 5-figure loss after the stream was done that I was not expecting. So kind of like whatever, but the opportunity seemed really good on Friday, so I did the trade, and it was just this. It was just this, right? And I talked about this through the trade. It almost took me out. I'm telling you, always use an 8. I don't really mean that seriously, but I always like to use an 8 just for luck, and it worked out well there. I was just looking for a back test of the regular trading hours high, gave it a little bit of wiggle room to get to the overnight high, and so that was my first exit. My second exit was this guy. Why was my second exit here? I don't remember why this exit was here. Oh, right, because that's the point of control test, right? Because, okay, so at this point, at this moment on the 950 candle, that was here. Oops. 950 candle is over here. Here. 950 candle was the daily no change and that daily point of control. That's this guy over here. Right, that was the target that I wanted to play for on this day when I made that buy near the low of the prior day. So I just mentioned this as the carryover target, right? Because again, this is kind of what I like about VP is you kind of know where you're playing for, right? And like talking about it, eyeing it, like it keeps you focused for what these buyers should be trying to get done, what these buyers and sellers should be trying to get done, even if your original trade from the prior day is no longer on. You know what I mean? So that was it, and then I stopped the rest of it. I forget. Towards the end of the session, I forget when. It was right. It was pretty soon after, right? So chop, pretty solid day, and that was it. So honestly, all things considered, yips and all, not bad. But I just know it could have been a lot better. But the way that I'm trying to tackle it is just trying to make better decisions and not beating myself up. Like the worst thing that you can do when you're not feeling sharp is beat yourself up over it, right? Like you gotta show yourself grace. Grace is super important in this game. Like acceptance, grace, these things are gonna really help your psychology. And if you're really good with psychology, then mistakes don't matter too much. They don't compound. So that's it. If you are interested in checking out our community, again, you get access to those live streams. You can hang out with us all day. We're posting setups all the time. We're talking through our trades. We're lollygagging around. Check it out. Links in the description below. And if you are interested in getting trade zones sent to your inbox every single week, update from me, update from Dan, and live updates for any action that we take regarding those trade setups, then check out the string report. Links in the description below as well. Otherwise, this was a doozy. If you made it this far, if you wouldn't mind hitting us with a like and subscribe, we would appreciate that very much. Otherwise, appreciate y'all tuning in. Thanks for sharing some of your time and energy with me. Hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I hope to see y'all next time